On the seventh Sunday of Christmas, Sharon shared with me a little skinny bag filled with treats. It's pretty easy. I'm going to bring in this Sweetest Christmas Designer Series paper, and with the exception of this print that has the large candy canes, none of the paper patterns are directional. And that is key to making this box as easy as can be. So we've got stripes and we've got candy canes that go in all sorts of directions. If you have directional paper, it just takes a little bit longer for you to think about how you want things, but it's still pretty easy. You're going to start with a piece of 6x6 Designer Series paper. I'm going to bring in my Simply Scored tool because that is what I prefer to use for boxes. And directional paper or non-directional paper doesn't matter in this particular case. Whatever edge you want to look at. So if I'm looking at the box and the top is up here and the bottom is down here, then I want to have the paper reflecting that. I want to be able to pretend I'm looking at the box in this view. We're going to score in several places. We're going to score at the 1.5 inch mark. Now you have two different balls on the ends of here. This smaller one probably is best for cardstock. This larger one is better for the DSP because the DSP is a little bit thinner and more delicate. So if you've never used a Simply Scored tool, you simply put the stylus ball in the measurement. So this is the 1.5 mark, and then draw down. And then I'm going to do it at 2 3/4 as well. Remember, all the dimensions and directions are on my blog, stamperhood.com. 4 1/4 and 5 1/2. And then I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees, so a quarter turn, and I'm going to score at 1 1/4. And that's all we need of our Simply Scored tool. I will need my stylus in a minute though. Let me pull this up a little bit, see if you can see the score lines that are in here. If you can't see them on the pattern that you are working with, you might want to burnish first with your bone folder. I can see okay on this pattern. You may not be able to on camera, but I can. So I'm going to hold off. When I scored this, the top was up here. And I can tell which way the top is because it's opposite the one that has this horizontal score line. So here's this horizontal score line. That's the bottom. That means that's the top. I'm going to bring in my paper snips. And in the lower right-hand corner, there's a tiny rectangle. We want to cut that off. Now, this score line has a thickness because remember, we were using the wider ball. So you can actually see a left and a right edge. I'm going to make sure I cut that whole score line off. And same thing on the other edge. I've cut away that rectangle. Now this long skinny piece right here, that's the tab that connects to the other side of the box. Whenever I have tabs, I like to miter them, just in case something's not totally squared up, the edges won't show. Now I'm going to come back down here to the bottom and I'm going to cut along these vertical score lines right up until it meets that horizontal. The one that's important here is this middle section. This is the front of your box. So we've got the tab that adheres to the back of the box. And so then this wider one, this middle one right here, that is the front of the box. I'm going to cut off the edge of the score line here and the closest edge here. And then on these flaps, I'm going to miter because these are the sides of the box. So they're flaps, and so they get mitered. Over here, same thing. I don't have to trim off this score line because when I miter it, it automatically gets trimmed off. When I trim on this one, again, this is the back side. It's a little bit more important than a side. I'm going to trim off that score line and miter in. So this is what you should have when you're finished. Something that looks like this. And now you can burnish. You're going to fold on all your score lines and use your bone folder to make nice crisp edges. That is the secret to a nice box. And then remember we have this bottom one as well, which this honestly is easier to burnish when it's intact because then you only have one fold versus 4. All right, so there we have it. This is the outside of our box. This is the inside. With the outside of the box facing up, we're going to apply some adhesive. My preferred adhesive on boxes is tear and tape. I'm going to start with this tab. I'm going to apply the tear and tape right next to the score line. There we go. And we'll rub it in nicely. And then I'm going to adhere it. Now remember, this is the front. So this is the front flap. That's the one that gets folded in last. And it will attach to the back flap. So I will need, and I think I'm going to put my adhesive this way. Right on those edges there. If you want to put a little bit on the flaps, you can as well. You don't need it. The weight of whatever's inside is going to hold it down, but if it makes you feel better, go ahead and just put a little bit on each one of those. All right. We've got our adhesive on there and burnish it down. And this burnishing step just makes it a little bit easier to peel. And I can peel that with probably my fingernail. If it gets to be a little persnickety, I could peel it with my take your pick tool. When I remove that backing, I'm going to flip it over and just fold that tab over so the sticky is up. Then I'm going to fold this right in half, so on that second score line, and it lines up perfectly. It's like magic almost. So where this seam is, that's on the back, which means that this is the front. So now I just need to remove all the backing on this tear and tape, which it's a little bit easier if you remove it first rather than having to hold it in the air, but it doesn't really matter. I say that, but it really would have been easier the other way. All right, this one's getting a little, there we go. So I find taking the pointed piece of your take your pick tool can get under there pretty easily too. All right, so remember, flaps go in first, and I'm gonna try to make this square as I'm going along. And then the back, and the back one is the one that has all the adhesive on it. So we're gonna adhere that down to the other ones. And then we're gonna fold the top flap over. And as you're doing that, make sure that you are getting this squared up so the box fits nicely together. All right. So here's my front edge. It's a soft edge. It's not a cut edge. That's how I know it's the front, plus where it's joined is in the back. I'm going to take my index fingers and put them on the sides and push in a little bit while I'm squeezing the front and the back pieces together. And that is how this bag gets formed. Now, you're going to take a hole punch, or a die or something that cuts out a little circle. I happen to have a 20-something-year-old punch from Stampin' Up, long since retired. I'm going to punch in the middle here. Just one punch. Now you could do 2 punches and so that you could have a bow in the front. I'm not going to use a bow. I'm going to use a little piece of ribbon. This is a 6-inch piece of that real red ribbon that comes in the 2-pack, real red and garden green, in the mini catalog. Remember, you're working from the front, so if you have to cheat and see where the back is, which I can see that's that, you're going to take the folded edge and poke that through with your stylus. I should probably use this thin end. It probably works better. There we go. All right, now that that's through, we're going to thread the loose ends. And it's funny what you remember. I remember making this kind of pull or closure on a card, I think, many, many years ago when I was first starting, I think. That was a long time ago. All right, so we just pull, and there it stands up on its own. We're good to go. We just need to decorate this box now. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't put the treat inside. Wait a second, we have to start over then. Okay, this is gonna fit 3 Lindt chocolates. I'm never gonna eat these. They're dark and white, which I will eat if it's an emergency, but these are left over from last year or maybe Mother's Day, I think. One of Aaron's ex-girlfriends gave them to me. And I just never got around to eating these. I was never desperate enough to eat dark chocolate or white chocolate. Normally, I would probably pick out milk chocolate truffles to go, to better go, or mint to better go with the design. But we're going to put that in there, and now we're ready to seal it up. This is what's going to protect the chocolate from me. So I found the front. We'll do this again. So there's a lesson for you when you're making these. Make sure you put the treat in before you tie the ribbon. Sadly, I can bet that when I was taping last year's video where I made a similar type of bag, that I also forgot then as well. My hands are a little bit ratty right now because I've had to do it a couple times, so I'm just going to give them a little shave. There we go. And so there is our box. Let's go ahead and decorate him. Him, her, I don't know, it's a box. So I'm going to take a piece of black cardstock, and this is just a scrap that I pulled out, and I'm bringing in my penguin punch. So the penguin has 2 parts, has the back, which is going to be black, and then kind of his bib area and face area, which is going to be white. I'm going to bring in my basic black cardstock and punch that out. And then I have a scrap of white somewhere right here. And I'll go in from the other side and punch that one. So whichever side you're punching, that's the side you want to feed into so that you don't waste any paper. All right, now I need to decorate my little penguin guy. And the Penguin Place stamp set comes with several stamps. And lots of little ones. So be careful when you're dealing with this that you don't lose any of them. So here's his eye. And, I mean, that's his beak. And here are his 2 eyes. And I've already got the bow out. So to stamp his eyes, we need some black ink. So here's my Memento Tuxedo black. We need a little block. And I try to split the difference where this little dip is. That one actually I stamped a little too hard. I'm going to flip him over. I'll be a little bit more gentle this time. There we go. Perfect eyes. I'm going to take his eyes and move them off to where I can see them so I don't lose them. I'm going to take his little beak, and there are two beaks in this set. One that points to the side for this guy, and one that points sort of down for this one. I'm going to bring in crushed curry for the beak. All right. My block is dirty. Let me clean my block. I'm just rubbing it on my pants right now. All right. I'm going to lightly ink that up. I'm going to put his little beak right there between his eyes, a little bit underneath. And then we just need to give him a little, just a little dapper look to him. So we're going to give him a bow tie. And we will coordinate his bow tie with the paper, which means we need some real red ink. Here's my real red ink pad. And there his little bow tie, which is so adorable. All right, let's bring in our glue. And we're just going to put a little bit of liquid glue on here. Flip him over and attach him. And I like to kind of pick him up so I can move it around just as I need to get it centered nicely. There we go. Now you could, when you put him on here, you could take a little rectangle of real red if you wanted him to, you know, really stand out. So this rectangle is, I think, 1 1/4 by 2 inches, but I'm not going to do that. I like him just plain, but I need to have him stand out a little bit, which means I need some dimensionals. I'm just going to put 2 on him, 1 on his head and 1 on his body. And we'll just attach him just like that. And our little bag is done. And this is the 7th Sunday of Christmas.